Welcome to Roll for Adventure. I'm Bonnie.
I'm Trent.
And I'm Bren.
And today we'll be looking at Goblin Quest, a game where you play as goblins with a very low life expectancy.
In Goblin Quest, you don't control just a single character. Instead, you control a clutch of 5 goblins. You don't play them all at the same time. You just have 4 replacements ready for when your first goblin inevitably dies.
In most games, the death of a character means game over. In Goblin Quest, it's just another opportunity for comedy. In fact, a particularly spectacular death will actually help the next goblin with their rolls.
This isn't really a game about winning or completing epic quests. Goblins in this world only live for a week, so their goals are generally pretty small.
Your group might want to throw a big party or make a war banner, or they might have to look after an orc baby for an afternoon. Whatever their goal, the only certainty is that many goblins are going to die in this process.
Each game gives the player's goblins 3 quests to complete, each quest containing 3 stages. If we take the war banner as an example, they might need to find some material, then paint it, then put it up somewhere that everyone can see.
Sounds simple, right? Well, they're in an evil war camp, and materials are hard to come by. So one goblin has the bright idea to steal a wizard's robe. How they manage to do this without being incinerated? That's where the story starts getting fun.
At the start of the game, the players will roll to see how many successes each stage of the quest needs to be completed. The game is usually played without a game master, but having someone run the scenario for new players is probably a good idea.
To succeed at a task, players will need to roll some 6-sided dice. The number of dice depends on how many aspects of their goblin clutch they can bring into the story.
Each clutch has 5 attributes: their name, their expertise, a quirk, a dream, and an ancestral heirloom.
Say that my goblin wanted to chop down a tree to create a banner stand. If his last name was Chopper, I could add a dice to the roll. If his expertise was hitting things, I could add another dice, and so on.
Now, more dice is not always a good thing. Sure, there are more chances of succeeding, but there's also more chance to kill off your goblin.
Any dice that lands on a 1 or a 2 means an injury, and 2 injuries will kill your goblin. A roll of 3 means something bad happens, 4 means something good happens, and a 5 or a 6 means a success.
Once they see how quickly their goblins die, some new players start trying to roll less dice to try and stay alive. But that's not really in the spirit of the game. Goblin Quest is all about making your goblins live and die in a spectacular fashion.
Yeah, die being the key word. Getting attached to your character in this game is definitely a bad idea.
Goblin Quest is probably one of the most comedic games out there. Everything in the system and setting feeds into that need to generate some funny moments.
Yeah, there's no min-maxing, no rules lawyering, just simple, funny experiences. If you're new to role-playing, this might be a good place to start.
Well, that's a quick breakdown of the core mechanics of Goblin Quest. After the break, we'll go into the strengths and weaknesses of the game and give you our overall impressions. Stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Roll for Adventure. We're having a look at the game Goblin Quest. So guys, we've had a look at the core mechanics of the game. How would you sum up the overall feel of Goblin Quest?
In one word, silly. You're silly goblins trying to achieve silly things with silly voices. It's a silly game.
But silly by design. As soon as you open up the book, you immediately get that tone that's being carried across in the book.
I mean, the illustrations, the feel, the diagrams, the writing, even the little asides in the book all feed into that feeling of silly, crazy fun.
And what the designer was going for.
Keep in mind, these goblins are meant to die. You start out with 5, but not all at once. You've got 1 each until that 1 dies, and then you take on the next one. I've played games where a player kept the same goblin the whole game. He just didn't happen to roll any bad dice, like dice rolls, and therefore didn't die, which was kind of boring at the end of it. You want fun deaths. You want to be silly about it, and there are rules in the system to kill off your goblin early if you want to. Like if you find you're just not accidentally dying, do it. And just role play it. Say how your goblin dies.
And that's what really makes this game memorable. You know, having those spectacular deaths are really a core to this game.
Like, I mean, one time I was playing and I had this character, he was like, "You tree, you have wronged my clan." and he runs up to the tree and he cuts it down. And I rolled nothing but ones. And so, splat, the tree splattered my goblin. And it was lots of fun.
Now, essentially with this game, the focus is on comedy. So we try and enforce the funny voices rule, at least when we're starting off the game.
Yeah, once you've been playing for a little bit and you've gotten used to the funny voices, you can let them drop. It's just the funny voices really gets you into the mindset and gets you playing silly goblins.
And it is in the rules. So if you start out getting everyone to go, oh, I'm a goblin and I talk in a really high-pitched voice, then people think, yeah, I'm a goblin.
They take on that
tone.
Yeah, they take on that mindset and it really adds to the game.
So at the start of the game, if you've got one player who's playing the Game Master, or if you don't, just as a group, you'll come up with what your quests are. In the basic rule books, it tells you to have 3 quests. Each quest has 3 stages, and each of those has a number of successes you have to achieve to fulfill the quest. When I first played this seemed like a lot. Like I wasn't sure we were going to get through all of these and that it would stretch out the game for a very long time. But it turned out really well. It's amazing how quickly, like if someone rolls a lot of successes, you go through them.
Yeah, when you really get up to speed with this game, it really gets down to about a 2-hour play session, which is good.
I mean, the first time you play, you really want to read through the setting of the book first, just so everyone gets an idea of the silliness that goes on, so that when someone says something like, a hobgoblin appears, everyone understands the hobgoblins are really the lawyers of the dark evil camp. And so take that time and really have a look at the setting first. I mean, it may slow down the game for the first time, but once you've done that, character creation can take only a minute or 2.
And I especially like the fact that the drawing of the goblins really adds to the feel of this game.
Yeah, it's straight up. You don't have to tell your players to draw characters. There's a blank goblin there. You're going to feel inclined to colour it in.
And when you start drawing your goblin, for example, if you give him a scar, that immediately gives personality to the goblin that you're playing.
So the thing I really love about Goblin Quest is that it still gives me the fantasy fight combat hit that you get from Dungeons & Dragons, but without the long-term campaign, without all that, and you're not afraid to die.
Something to keep in mind, though, is you're not really ever in a position as a goblin to hurt anyone else. Like, really the only person you can hurt is yourself.
So one of the awesome things about Goblin Quest is the game comes with a heap of fun hacks at the end of the core rulebook.
Yeah, there's all different sorts. Like, you can play recruits on a starship and be all red shirts and have your red shirts die on horrible Star Trek adventures. Yeah. Another one you can play is Inigo Montoya Jr. You play a swordsman trying to go out and avenge your master, and at some point your swordsman is going to die. His apprentice will then take up the quest to go and avenge your swordmaster.
One of the really cool hacks of Goblin Quest is Regency Ladies, where you play like the mother in old-time English aristocracy with 5 daughters that you're trying to marry off. And if they don't marry up higher, then you just cut them off and they're dead to you.
If you feel rushed for time, there is an alternate sort of play set that you can play with called Go Go Hyper Goblin Patrol Go! It's all about changing how the dice work. On a 1, your goblin's straight out dead. But if you roll a 6, you've got an overwhelming success, and you actually reduce the difficulty of that quest by 1, speeding the whole process up.
And you really get through that game quickly then as a result.
So the great thing about Goblin Quest is it's a one-shot game. You can't run it for more than 1 session, which is why it's good to slot in between other games. It's a very quick one.
Yeah, I mean, if you have goblins that survive to the end of the game, you're probably doing something wrong.
So Goblin Quest is originally written to be GM-less, that's no game master. But with a group of new players, I play it with myself as the game master, or you want someone who knows the rules to really explain it and set the stage for everything. After that, it's really easy to just draw up your own goblin and join in the fun.
I feel like the game was really designed to be GM-less though. Once you've started the game and you've created the scene, it feels like there's really not a lot for the GM to do.
Yeah, and of course, if you realise you get a rule wrong after the fact, No one really cares. This is a silly game, and you move on and you're still having fun.
Yeah. After the break, we'll be speaking with the designer of Goblin Quest. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Roll for Adventure. Today we're looking at Goblin Quest. We are lucky enough to be joined by Grant Howitt, the designer of Goblin Quest, all the way from New York. Welcome to the show, Grant.
Hello there, pleasure to be here.
So what inspired you to create Goblin Quest?
Okay, so I used to be part of a playtest community in London, and we'd meet once a month, and we would play new games, which we'd made ourselves, and other people's games as well. And I was running a session and hadn't done anything for that week. I've been playtesting a game called Reckless, where you play murder pop cyberpunk superheroes, and it didn't really, and it got into a point. I was like, I didn't want to test it anymore, and I had about an hour before the game was running, so I wrote a stupid game about goblins on the back of an envelope. And drew a map of a goblin camp, and then went and tested it. And somehow it was quite good. Like just right off the bat, it was pretty good, and everyone had fun. And so from there I developed it, and it got to where it is today. So really, it was desperation and an attempt to try and look like a game designer. But really, I suppose the most inspiring thing is just how stupid goblins are. They have really stupid faces. They are like comedy creatures because they're not lovable enough that when you kill them, it isn't funny, but they are lovable enough that they can get up to hijinks and it's adorable. I think they're the perfect fit for a comedy game.
And what were your main design goals?
Okay, well, I mean, we've iterated since the time, so there's been a few more. It's not changed a lot, but it's changed some since the original thing. And the design goal, I guess, was to enable people to have fun, to be able to run without a games master, because it's a GM-less game. Often I run it for people, so someone knows the rules and can steer things, especially if you've got younger players. But the goal was to allow people allow them to be funny and to give them comic timing. So the standard unit of comedy in Goblin Quest is you try and do something simple, it kills you in a stupid way, and it's Tom and Jerry, that sort of thing, except they actually die. That sort of itchy and scratchy cartoon violence. And the way the game's set up is it's like, I hope I can do this. And sometimes it works, but more often you get really fatally injured. And that you add up all the fatal injuries, and eventually that somehow results in success. But it gives it that pacing. I think that what I wanted to do was give people the license to be funny and operate in a safe space without feeling embarrassed or like they're performing or something like that.
How would you sum up Goblin Quest for somebody new to role-playing?
Okay, so I suppose I give them the basic introduction to roleplay. Like normally you play a wizard or a warrior or a rogue and you go and explore dungeons, or you play like a goth vampire, an immortal vampire who's really worried because they can't get enough blood and their mother doesn't love them anymore. And then you take all the serious bits out of role-playing and just put them over there. And Goblin Quest is the bits that left. It's a very light game. It's like there's very few rules to learn. The rule book's very short. You kind of make up the world with your friends as you go along. So there's at no point, there's a little bit in the book actually, which says just go with stuff that comes up. So at no point are you really allowed to say, hang on, orcs don't act like that. No, if your goblins believe orcs act like that, then that's how orcs act now. So it's a way of telling a stupid story about stupid, incompetent creatures with your friends, and it's a fun way to pass about 2 hours before you play a real game. No, it is a real game. It's before you play a more serious game, I suppose.
Are there any aspects of the game that you think could work better?
Just really getting down to the meat. Yeah, I suppose so. So every time I play Goblin Quest or one of its derivatives, because we had the Kickstarter when I kickstarted it back in October. We're hoping to get the print product out over the next month or so. And the thing which I know when I play it is that the game goes on for more than an hour. And for everyone else, they love it and they take their time and they draw all their goblins. They tell this big sprawling story with lots of callbacks. And for me, I'm like, but people aren't having enough fun fast enough. So I keep shaving numbers off and I keep making all the enemies lower and I keep pushing the game forward faster. But I think that's my own, what's the word, insecurities and my own preferences. But like we've had a lot of positive feedback and like people really like the way it works. But for me, I think I would do a much faster version if I was to write it again. Just like 10-minute game.
So Grant, there's a bunch of hacks for Goblin Quest contained in the book. Which one's your favorite?
Hang on, let's have a look at them here. Oh, this is the proof. This is the very first proof that came through, and as you can see, the title isn't quite on straight, so we had to get some new ones. But this is the one copy of Goblin Quest that exists. I think my favorite is probably My Name's Inigo Montoya Jr., which does some. So Inigo Montoya is the one of the characters for The Princess Bride, one of my favorite films, and we skirt copyright quite a lot in this game, and it's skirting copyright in that you play a Renaissance swordsman or swordswoman, and then when they die, you roll up the person who avenges them, and then when they die, you roll up the person who avenges the previous three, and everyone's doing this all at once. But it's expressly GM-less, and I think I've made a system which means that you get kind of this rolling up and down in scenes, which I'm quite happy with. Also, I quite like Sean Bean Quest, where everyone has to talk like Sean Bean, and then die, and you get a replacement Sean Bean. But it's mainly just because I've played it with a lot of Australians, actually, because I was over there when I wrote the game, and it was wonderful to hear you guys try and do a northern accent. And eventually everyone just ends up as pirates. It's Sean Bean, famous pirate.
While there's a good framework for the game, Goblin Quest feels like the rules can be very optional at times. Was avoiding too many rules important for you?
Yeah, I hate rules. As a game designer, I really loathe them. But basically, that's the thing. So, like, that was an exaggeration. I love rules. I love reading rules, and like, I read every role-playing book I can get my hands on to try and consume and learn and what people are doing with mechanics to power stories. And what we've got in Goblin Quest is a really cut down mechanic which powers this one story. You couldn't use it to tell a dungeon crawl effectively, I don't think. You couldn't use it to tell a space opera effectively, because it's about these small individual incidents. And like some of the rules hacks kind of spin out a little bit, but at the core, there are very few rules. I would say that the rules aren't optional in that you don't have a GM, and so you need some sort of guiding rhythm for the game. Yeah, I often find like the thing which really upsets me is like Pathfinder, for example. I love the richness and depth of Pathfinder in that I can play a rogue and then have one of 40 different rogue archetypes and the races and the feats and everything. And so it's my rogue, it's my own rogue, and this is what's working. But the amount of reading you have to do to get to that point, there comes a point in every character generation session where I'll get the character done, I'll get the archetype done, I'll come to feats, and I'll sorry, can everyone else just pick up my feats for me because I don't care enough. And that sort of rules bloat with the understanding as well in a competitive game like Pathfinder. Like, it's not competitive, but there is the idea that you're supposed to be optimized. That sort of rules bloat means that it's such a barrier to entry. Even as me, a man who writes and reads role-playing games all day, I can get bored going into that. And so with my games, it's much. I try to go for something much easier to understand. So once you've got the idea of the game, you can play it, understand it, and then move on. That's what I'm after.
Goblin Quest feels like a great way to bring people into role playing. Was that something really important to you?
Yeah, definitely, and kids too, because I started reading. So the first time I learned role-playing games existed was in the year 2000. I didn't know they were a thing. I thought D&D was basically a glorified board game. I didn't know what it was. And I played a lot of Warhammer, and I was in Carlisle in the north of England, about to go to Games Day 2000, and some guys were playing Vampire the Masquerade, and it was absolutely astonishing to see that they were just doing anything. And so to go from this really cut and dried measuring rules game of Warhammer to be some guys in vampire terms, they were playing a stupid Sabbat game set on Halloween. So they go around drinking people's blood, being chased around mazes by mortals with chainsaws, that sort of thing. It was really daft. It absolutely astonished me. And so to have the idea that you can do anything is really fun. And a lot of new players I've noticed when I brought them in, you'll sit them down with a traditional role-playing game and you say, okay, so it's your turn. What are you going to do? And the choice is dizzying, and they don't know what to do, and like they don't know. Well, and also they're really worried about like if I run forward here, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Am I going to let the side down? Am I going to embarrass myself? And so with Goblin Quest, it was very much whatever you do, even if like I think like the example we have in the book. I don't know whether we changed this from the original one, but they're trying to build a wizard disguise, and if you want, you can tie your shoes. That will have as much effect as going and shaving off a wizard's beard. And the fun part is like I tied my shoes. How is this useful? And it's much more improv focused then I'm going to mechanically affect the scene. So I think that's good for it. And also for kids as well, because kids don't like being told they can't do things, especially in Rob. So like, I want to do this. I want to misbehave. I want to mess around. It's a game about misbehaving. It's a game about dicking about, basically. And it's fun, and it gives kids that a really nice opportunity. It's got drawing in it. Like you make your own thing. You don't have to do a lot of reading. And I've played it with, I think, from about 8 to 11-year-olds, and they've all just got it like that. It's really easy to understand. I hear a lot of stories of people playing with their kids and stuff, and like maybe some of the slapstick violence isn't necessarily perfectly what you want your kids to do, but kids are gonna tell stories about slapstick violence anyway. I mean, you know, cops and robbers and stuff. That's something which I always did when I was a kid. And the do you have the horrible history books in Australia? Horrible histories?
No, I don't think we do. No.
There was a series of books written in England, very popular, and they have a TV show now, which is on its 4th season. But it was history for kids, and it was designed to be all the gross and violent and interesting bits. So it was like, this king was killed when someone shoved a poker up his arse and he bled to death. Or this guy, this woman married someone and then on their wedding night eviscerated him and then let all the troops into the castle. And it's all the really cool, violent narrative stuff with lovely drawings. And I wanted this to be, it's not sweet, but like really like sharp. The drawings look a little bit like satirical cartoons from a newspaper, I'd guess, that level of quality. And so I wanted to achieve that with Goblin Quest. And so a kid picks this up, and there's all these fun things, and there's all these fun drawings and fun ideas for stuff. It's like, go explore this world, go have fun, pose with your friends. And that's what I want. I want to try and spark kids' imaginations with this.
So what's your favourite death scene to come out of a Goblin Quest game?
Oh, let's try. I think that's a big question. Favorite death scene? So because they all sort of like roll together into one, I think. My favorite death scene, one of my favorite death scene. There's one time I disguised myself as a bag of shoes to try and sneak into a wizard's changing room, and a lazy wizard came in and just put on the bag and crushed me to death. So pushed me through and I died. He was wandering around, like he sort of got trousers out of the bag. I don't know, like someone else narrated my death, but I think that was the epitome of Goblin Quest, in that you do something fundamentally harmless, and then for stupid reasons it leads to your death. So I quite like that. And also this one guy I had who ate batteries, because he was a lightning wizard, and he never cast any spells. He died immediately upon arriving because he ate a load of batteries.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Grant. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Well, that's about it for this week. All that's left is to give our final ratings. To keep with our theme, we use a dice rating system on Roll for Adventure, ranging from a D4 to a D20. Bren, what are you going to give Goblin Quest?
I really enjoyed Goblin Quest, and it's because it's meant to be silly. And it's a good opportunity just to sort of goof off and really change gears when you're playing RPGs with your group. So I'm giving it a D10.
And Trent?
I feel like the hacks give this game a lot of life. I felt like I was a little bit done with Goblin Quest after the first game, but I've read through the book and I really love the hacks and want to play all of them heaps. So I'm going to give it a D8.
I actually really love Goblin Quest. It's one of my favourite games. It just does what it's meant to do. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to give it a full-out D20. You can find out more about Goblin Quest on our website, rollforadventure.com.au. And while you're there, you can find the video of this week's show, as well as exclusive web clips and the full version of our interview with Grant. Next week, we'll be donning our capes as we take a look at the superhero game Mutants and Masterminds. See you then.